quick video on SQL injection. The whole point here is that if you have a database, you can say you had a web front end to that database and somebody was looking for information. If you put in the wrong stuff, you could cause serious problems to the database, right? So we'll have a look at that. Very simple example. You all did SQL years gone by. That's a very simple SQL statement. Select star from customers where customer ID is a number. So typically your web front end would take in that number and then the back end code would implement the SQL, take that number as a variable and give you the answer back to this statement. The problem occurs in that the bad people, instead of sending in just that number, they send in something like this. And the problem is, if you put a semicolon in that statement, this is the end of the first statement, so you would get that. And unfortunately, the second statement would be implemented, whereby you would delete the whole database. One simple question is, just so I read away, why is there no little apostrophes at the end here? Here, that's because they're already implemented. Your main code. Remember, the web form would just take in the number. You wouldn't type in the number with the apostrophes inside. You would just type in the number. So therefore, if you want to replace just the number, you don't put in the apostrophes. Anyway, so that would end up getting fed in to your database, and you would end up deleting all your database content, right? And we'll have a look at that in the lab. You can do something similar. So the fundamental point is you should always verify your input, just like we talked about in the lectures. And if you don't do that, if you don't verify your input, so to say all just numbers, or you don't make sure you don't have any input with a semicolon, you can get SQL injection attacks like that. And they're still very famous because people write a lot of bad code. Okay, so we will go and have a look at the steps. Basically, what you're going to do is you're going to create a command line database, put some data in it, back it up, then do one of those little key ones to delete it, and then restore it so that you can still do it. All right, so let's have a look. If you go to your Google Cloud, you're going to install a thing called MariaDB server, which is essentially a MySQL database. The naming is due to trademarks or something, right? One question here that's important as well is why do we need to type sudo here? If you could run this entire lab in a container if you want, and you won't need sudo. Right? So let's just go have a look at that. We're going to install the DB server package, right? So let's go peek there. And we want to install it, right? And the issue is if I type this one, if I take AP update, just like I did many times in my container, that won't work. The reason why it won't work is it says permission denied, and that's because in Google Cloud you are in as your normal user, whereas if you do it in a container, let's run a quick container here, you will see that you're in as root, okay? And if you're in as root, you have root permissions. The apt update will work. Whereas if I'm in as a normal user on a Linux machine, it won't work. So what I need to do is type sudo, and all sudo does is temporarily gives you higher permissions to be able to execute the command that root would normally execute. So if I do that, and then I can do the server instructions. And then once we have it installed, we need to run it, okay? So it's user bin, blah, blah, blah. And so you can run this entire database in the container if you want, but you don't type sudo for any of the commands, okay? So let's go and install there, hopefully. Give it a second. Okay, cancel sudo again, and user bin SQL. Hope that will run my server. And I found what did I type wrong? My SQLD underscore safe. Oh, Wally. Got it slightly wrong. Please. We will see there it is there. Nicely. Okay, so now we can lash through the rest of the lab. Now I'm going to do this very quick because there's nothing goes wrong here, right? So I need to go into my SQL and then show databases, right? So sudo SQL application, right? Show database. Don't forget this. At the moment, there are 3 databases in there. We're going to add a little database, right? We don't need to do anything with those. They just come with MySQL, okay? So there we go. Next week, blah, blah. I'm going to create a database. We're going to create database SQL tests. We're going to use and show tables, right? So create database SQL test. It worked. Use SQL test. Just open Google to use rather than one of the other databases that are in it. And show tables. We don't have any data in there at the moment, okay? So we need to put some table in there. So create table users, blah, blah, blah. So let's try and type that in. Create table. You might get this wrong a few times, all right? Table users. And then brackets in ID int, not null primary key. So ID not all primary key. Auto underscore increment. Auto increment. Comma name and you will remember these. You will remember these from last year. Password. Well, all right, we got that right. Work. Yeah, and then we go show tables. Describe users. Will tell us, yeah, okay. So we haven't got any data in there. We told it what's our table, right? So we add some data, right? Insert into users values, dual and blah blah. Okay, so insert users. Okay. Right. Pep white color. Okay. We go and have a look. See what's in there. Select. You'll remember this from last year. Start from users. And there we go. We have our data. Okay. So okay. Fine. I'll let you figure that one out. How to get tabs passed. So it doesn't matter. Now the problem is, as we said, typically if we don't protect this command line, right? If this command line is based on somebody entering data from a web form, you'd have a big problem if you didn't protect it right. So again, you can read this, right? So the main thing we need to do is we need to back up the database first. So to back up the database, you could either exit from here, or you can actually just have it from another window, because the important point is the backup of the database needs to be done from the Linux command lines. Out here, agreed. So I need to go and type that in there. So just go into sudo mysql dump root database, and I'm just going to export that file essentially. I'm going to dump it into password is just return, and I should now have a backup of my database that I did there. Okay. Now, what we do is we're going to go in, do that. If we did a really bad, I do that from that, then I do watch. So, add drop table users. You can put in whatever command you want to. So that's the first one's a legitimate command, but then if I were to do this. Okay. So what I'm trying to say is, that would be the normal thing you wanted. If you don't protect your input, someone could add this in. And unfortunately now, let me try and do this. I have lost all my data, right? So if you want to get it back, just go restore it from here. And sudo mysql -root. Okay. Essentially importing it there. Password. And now if we go back in, hopefully have a look here. Right, data is back. Okay. So all I've done is stored the data. So the important point is this point. As I said, the important point is if you don't protect your input, is we want to just something like a number. If you don't sanitize your input like we did in the lectures, somebody will add more data in, add more stuff into the command, and you could end up with serious trouble. And that's basically it. Okay.